So, hello, my name is CVP Sean Whitaker, and today we're going to talk about the Integrated Personnel and Pay System, Army IPPSA. We're going to explain how this actually relies to warrant officers, how it pertains to what you do as your Army job. We're going to talk about some of the things that the IPPSA program is developing, some of the things that we're doing to kind of help us with warrant officers move forward, where we are when the program in the development cycle, and what to expect as your function as a warrant officer going forward with IPPSA, and how this is going to pertain to your new jobs and your new skill set. So let's go to the next slide, please. So here's our outline. We're going to identify what IPPSA is, some of the benefits that IPPSA is providing us to the field, the current release update, because that's extremely important for us right now, is knowing where IPPSA is in development for the development cycle, when do we plan on getting IPPSA for the active component and the reserve component, and net training. Net training will talk about what's coming forward and how we plan on training the force, training warrant officers with IPPSA. Okay, what does it say? And the elevator speech talks about, hey, IPPSA is the CAC-enabled integrated personnel and pay system, one soldier, one record, one-stop shop. The bottom line up front, IPPSA is a 3-in-1 component, automated personnel and pay system. It's going to combine capabilities as far as pay and personnel into one. What this does for the very first time, it enables the Army to have one integrated personnel pay system for all 3 components. This kind of gets rid of some of the nuances that we have today in the Army, where when we deploy, we have that separation between the guard and the reserve and the active component, and the abilities for them to really not be able to associate and keep accountability of each other. IPPSA is going to allow that seamless transition between components when you ETS from the active component to go to the guard or reserve, and vice versa. One soldier, one record throughout the entire platform of your career is going to provide capabilities for commanders, capabilities for leaders, capabilities for HR professionals, and most importantly, it's a system that's being designed for soldiers, not for us, for HR professionals. And that's really important to understand, as soldiers are at the forefront of what we do, and giving them the capability to actually access their own record, view their own information, is really critical. So who does IPPSA affect? We talked about this really, just talked about this. All 3 components, Army National Guard, active component, Army Reserve, all in one system. First time ever for the Army to do this. This is going to allow commanders to see their footprint between all 3 components, regardless of where you are in the battlefield. Soldiers, civilians, and contractors. So for the first time, we're also going to have soldiers, civilians, and contractors in one system to actually do HR work. So we know civilians they help us. There are HR professionals. Some civilians are our raters. Some civilians are GS employees, SES level employees. So they will be in IPPSA. They will have the ability to access IPPSA as an HR professional, and some government contractors who work on the HR realm. Also, members of other services. Now, this is key, because a lot of times when we deploy or we do those joint assignments, members from other services are also involved. So you think about the Air Force, the Navy, and the Marine Corps. So they will also have access to IPPSA, if depending on what environment you're in, and they need to access your record. So why IPPSA? $1 million question. The Army has recognized we have a problem. Today we do everything we can possible to make sure that we take care of our soldiers and civilians when they're with us. But a lot of times we have issues where we don't see the total force visibility. So what that means is Army readiness fails, because it takes us a lot of times a very long time, maybe up to sometimes weeks, to actually consolidate data and get certain information to our leaders. And that's normally due to different systems we have to access, the timeliness of the data that goes from one system to another. So total force visibility is huge when it comes to IPPSA, and that's what's going to allow us there. Talent management capability. Army leaders talk about IPPSA. They're not really talking about an HR system. They're talking about a talent management system. So if you see some videos and you see some speeches from the Chief of Staff, General McConville, one of the things he mentions most about IPPSA is the talent management aspect of IPPSA. That is key, because that allows us to actually look at soldiers from all realms of areas where they have different skills, different languages, different classes they took in college, different things they majored in. So talent management is really going to allow us to capture all those abilities, those knowledge, skills, and behaviors, and those cognitive and non-cognitive assessments, and really assess the soldier from hired to retired, and see what kind of skills they have to put them in the right position, in the right place. It's not just saying, hey, I need an 11 Bravo, and let's throw 11 Bravo here. It's say, I need the right 11 Bravo for this mission. Auditability. Auditability is another key piece because today the Army has a really bad problem of trying to do financial auditability. And it's mainly because of the lag in our HR systems and the accounting piece. It's because a lot of our systems today, a lot of our processes today are paper driven. So we rely on paper documents that get signed by someone and it gets routed to some area, some office. And then the end state of that paper transaction is a data entry into the system of record. IPPSA completely fundamentally changes that. So the business process will start in the system of record and it'll route to where it needs to go to. So from an audit standpoint, the system is tracking every time it goes to a certain location, to a certain office or a certain signature, and it keeps a time date stamp on that. And so we were able to track not only from an HR auditability to a pay auditability from start to finish. Okay, some of the benefits of IPPSA. There are a lot of benefits of IPPSA, but some of the highlights that we want to talk about on this slide here, the big piece is data standardization. From a data standpoint, today we have about 235 different HR personnel and pay personnel systems. Those 235 systems are transmitting data back and forth to each other in different codes, different types of languages. So a good analogy of that would be you have 235 different languages trying to talk to each other in the same language. A lot of times those interpretations get mixed. In an IPPSA environment, data standardization is huge because it'll take all the different data formats we have today between TOPMIS, EMILPO, EDAS, RLAS, SIDPERS, and it'll standardize that into one simple HR code, which is a people code. That allows us to keep track of data and not lose those key data elements today that we rely on to help soldiers out. Self-service portability is a huge one. So from a self-service portability, soldiers will have the ability to access IPPSA from their mobile device, at home from their computers, so they will no longer have to rely on actually coming in to the S1's office, coming into the finance office with a piece of paper that says, hey, I need help. I need somebody to give me this information. They can simply log on to IPPSA, view their record, and if they see something that they need to action on, they can literally just submit a trouble ticket. They can look at their record from start to finish, and that's something that we don't have today. And so when I mentioned earlier that IPPSA is a system designed for soldiers, this kind of shows it because the problem we have today is all of our HR systems are designed specifically for HR professionals, which is not a bad thing. It helps us with our jobs. But what we want to get to is HR systems should be designed for those that it's supposed to support, which is soldiers, not just the HR professional. So IPPSA will allow soldiers to actually get on the system and view their record and make those recommendations changes that they seem necessary. Efficiencies gained. There's a lot of efficiencies gained with IPPSA. We go from a paper-driven, non-auditable form way of doing business today, where we route documents through numerous different offices, different office symbols, office codes, and then at the end of that, we have to go back into the system and actually do transactions. A good example of this today is when you flag a soldier. You go on you route the 268 flag document through the chain of command. It's signed, and then you go into EMILPO, and then you do the flag transaction. But then that flag transaction sometimes results in barter reenlistment. It sometimes results in reassignment ineligibility. So then you have to go into EMILPO and do further codes. In IPPSA, when you do one transaction, it'll relate to every single other action that applies to. So for example, if I were to do the flag action in IPPSA, that restriction would apply to reenlistments, would apply to reassignments. So there are efficiencies gained by doing one transaction that applies everywhere else. Another one would be is on the pay side. We're going to do HR transactions that generate a pay trigger. That pay trigger will be sent to DGMS for pay. You no longer have to do two different records, two different transactions to help the soldier get paid. Reducing multiple HR systems. That talks about now we no longer have to manage a soldier's record in TOPMIS, manage a record in EMILPO, manage a record in EDAS, manage a record in multiple systems. One system will kind of reduce the need to manage records all over the place. One integrated personnel and pay system is huge because now you have one pay record regardless of what component you are. And when IPPSA becomes a pay system of record, now we no longer have two files. So today, in the Army, a soldier has a personnel record and they have a pay record. Well, the problem that we run into with that is a lot of times what's in your personnel record and what's in your pay record sometimes is different. And there's never been a case in the Army where a finance or pay trigger is the outcome of never some kind of HR record. So anytime you do some kind of HR transaction, whether it be a reassignment, a promotion, the end state of that may generate a pay trigger, but you're never going to have a pay trigger that's not the result of an HR transaction. So in the future, you do your transaction in IPPSA, and that will generate your correlation of your pay activities, which reduces the amount of pay errors and deficiencies. Coming up, another big benefit of IPPSA is we're going to automate the way that soldiers actually request for support. So today, the PAR, the Personal Action Request, is what we know as the DA Form 4187. It's a paper form. It has multiple formats. There's no standardized way to do this. IPPSA can provide that capability for soldiers to submit a personal action request electronically through the system for approvals or disapprovals, and they can use either the smartphone device or they could use a computer at home. And you can log on. It doesn't have to be with a government computer. It doesn't have to be on a government network. They can use their own network at home. Another benefit is the commander's dashboard. We're going to allow commanders and leaders the ability to view their personnel, to view their unit on the dashboard themselves. So the ability for commanders to log into the system, to be able to actually just say, okay, here's all my personnel and where they are right now. Here's all my personnel who are flagged. Here's my readiness. Here's all my non-availables and my availables. So commanders will be able to actually access information in front of them instead of relying on queries that we pull today from different systems of record. Okay, so capabilities by audience. There's three major user sets in IPPSA. There's the soldiers, which everyone in the Army will have access to. It's self-service access. Everybody in the Army will have access to it. So regardless of where you are in your role in IPPSA or what your job is, you're going to have a self-service soldier access to view your own record and submit actions upon your own self. There's commanders and leaders. If you're in a command billet, you automatically have access to what we call commander access, and that's the ability to actually look at your formation, look at your soldiers. If you're a leader, a platoon leader, a platoon sergeant, a squad leader, you'll be able to see the information for your soldiers that work specifically for you, so you can have certain rosters that are done for you. When IPPSA becomes this system for evaluations will be routed through you. You can use this as your alert rosters. And then the other users are HR professional. Now within that HR professional domain of users, there's a whole bunch of subsets of different users. So there's an HR professionals, and then there's HR professionals at different levels of echelon, which could be HRC, could be at brigade level, division, corps, and then there's different levels of access you would need from an HR professional, depending on what your job is, whether you work promotions or you work awards, or you end up working as a validator, which is someone who gives system access, system levels on auditor, someone who's auditing stuff. So all those different functions will take place inside IPPSA. Mobile service. So as of right now, the Army National Guard is live with IPPSA. They have just 2 more fielding groups left to go, and then all 54 states and territories will be live in IPPSA. At that point, we estimate to have anywhere from 300 to 400,000 soldiers live in IPPSA Release 2. As of right now, the IPPSA mobile app is up and running. It is live for all soldiers in the Army National Guard. If your state has been deployed with IPPSA, you have the ability to download the IPPSA mobile app right now. You can access the IPPSA mobile app. You can request certain transactions on yourself. You can view your record all through your mobile device. So you don't have to go into your S1 anymore. It's available on the TradeDoc App Store. It's free. So go ahead and download it and take a look at it. And then if you have any questions for your unit, you can submit all that on the mobile app. Here's the Increment 2 timeline. So FY19, Release 2, Increment 2 went live for the Army National Guard. We are still deploying Release 2 right now, and it will be done. It is projected to be complete next month. So as of March, and we project in March, all 54 states and territories will be live for the Army National Guard. Release 3 is projected to be live in FY22, December of 2021 calendar year. So what that means is is Release 3, the active component in the Army Reserve will go live in IPPSA in December of calendar year 21. Release 4 is projected sometime around 24 or after. We're not quite sure when this deployment will happen right now. The schedule is tentative, But in release 4, that's when the mill pay piece kicks in. Big change for us as warrant officers, big change for us as HR professionals is now mill pay function becomes the primary function of the AG Corps and no longer the finance corps. So what that means for us is now we have to get smart on how we do mill pay, on what entitlements that personnel are entitled to, what benefits they're allowed to get, because a finance corps is no longer going to support that mission. It belongs to the AG Corps, and that's in concurrent with IPPSA going live in 24. And then after release 4, we call it release 5 type of functionality. It's mainly like a release 4 plus. It's going to be evaluations functionality, retention management, some of the capabilities that the program depends on that the program is estimating giving us, and that should be tied to certain things such as DTAS functionality, more high side classified type of functionality. Some CAT card scanning, TPS type of activities, things that are gonna make a job a little bit better for us. Things that will help us support like an offline environment, so the ability to do transactions offline and not have to rely on the network environment. All that's projected to come after release 4, but to be determined on the release date for that. So release 2 capabilities right now, we talked about that earlier. These are some of the things that the National Guard does have for release 2 capabilities. They have alerts, notifications. They're able to do assignments and transactions, awards and decorations, so on and so forth. Some of these capabilities in release 2 are automated. Some of them are not automated. We have, at this point in release 2, we are sending transactions to DFAS, the DGMS RC, for pay impacting triggers, which is a big plus. Now the Army's TAP databases, ITAP, TAP DBR, TAP DBG, those are still up and running right now. So IPPSA is sending information to the TAPs to send directly to DEERS for dependent eligibility information. So some of this, some of the functionality of SIPR still remains for the Guard for release 2, but with added capabilities, and we are replicating that Sci-Ho Sci-Ku format to send directly to DEERS. Deployment sequence right now, as you can see, 8 fielding groups have been deployed to the Army National Guard for release 2. Fielding Group 9 is projected to be deployed on February 25th of this year. And once Fielding Group 9 goes live, we will have one more fielding group, and that's Fielding Group 10, and that consists of the remaining of the 54 states and territories for the Army National Guard. Training update. What the SSI in the AG school is working on right now is the training update to the field for the impacts that IPPSA is going to have on our training products as well as our business processes. So it is our responsibility here at the SSI to train soldiers to get them prepared to when they go back to their unit that they are well equipped with skills and knowledge to better further on their unit, to enhance the capabilities of their unit. IPPSA is providing a change in a lot of the ways we do business, and that includes automated formats, automated PARs, different analytics and metrics, as well as getting rid of some of the old school ways of doing business. So there are some big changes that the program has done as far as changing the doctrine, changing the standards. What we are doing here on the SSI is implementing all of that into our lessons. And so what the goal is in October of 2021 is we will plan to teach here at the SSI in the AG school all of the impacts that IPPSA is providing. So any lessons that include legacy training, legacy systems. When I mean legacy, I'm talking about IPPSA, I'm talking about EMILPO, EDAS, and TOPMIS. All the legacy training will go away in October 21, and IPPSA will be implemented in all aspects of our training, and that includes from AIT to the NCO academies to all the officer training schools. Data update. So in release 2, this slide talks about data, and it talks about the different data that we're getting from our authoritative data sources to other sources of record. So if you look at IPPSA right now, you see this is all the data that's currently captured in IPPSA. New functionality, and you see some of the transfer functionality from SIPRs. And you look at the in and outbound interfaces we currently have. We're sending information to 24 different total systems in release 2. And this talks about the authoritative data source. What's important for us as warrant officers is knowing where to put information in your record. Because with the implementation of IPPSA, you're no longer going to be allowed to manipulate data in the source in the system of record in HR record if it's not the authoritative data source. Prime example for that is ATMS. We all know ATMS is the authoritative data source for height and weight, for APFT, and for weapons qualification. A lot of times today, we put that information in email for promotion points. With the implementation of IPPSA, that's not going to be authorized. IPPSA will actually adhere to the Army's authoritative data standard. So all weapons qualification, all height and weight, all APFD information must be put in the ATMS to interface into IPPSA. So this slide talks about in release 2, this is the source systems that we're getting information from and what source systems we're sending information to. So as warrant officers, it is our job to understand exactly what the authoritative data source is for certain data and knowing where to go to get certain information from. So if something's wrong on your record, and say, for example, if IPPSA has a PT score that's incorrect, it's knowing that, hey, I have to go check ATMS to make sure the PT score is correct in ATMS. Okay, DGMS RC is the authoritative source for payroll record. And so what IPPSA is doing in release 2 is we are sending 26 TIN formats. A TIN is a transition is an interface format. Now, and those interface formats are going daily. Every day at 1700 Eastern Standard Time, IPPSA is sending an interface to DGMS on these 26 different TIN formats. So if you look at this slide here, the IPPSA action talks about what module, what part of IPPSA actually it actually completes a transaction, and then it sends the equivalent TIN format. If you look at the format, and then the DGMS action to DGMS RC to actually update pay. So a good example of this is when you do a name change. When you do a name change in IPPSA, that name change will trigger what we call a 104 TIN, and that 104 TIN will send to DGMS RC your new name. So now the payroll system record has your new name. And so these are all payroll pay impacting transactions that IPPSA will do in release 2 to send to DGMS. So you no longer have to take, so for example, if you do these transactions in IPPSA, it does not require you to take anything over to pay to get updated in your pay record. Okay, AOSDI. AOSDI is the Army Org Server data interface. This is a really big new thing that's coming from the Army G3. And we plug this into this brief as warrant officers because it specifically relates to us as human resources professionals on how we're going to manage our personnel. So we all know that global force management requires us to be able to track our individuals in our units from not just from Army at motion, but not just from Army at rest, but Army at motion. FMS Web today is the data input that we use to actually pull MTOs, to pull TDAs, and then view what our units are authorized. AOS is a server behind that stores all that data. A lot of times we have problems today where we have a unit that deploys but doesn't deploy as their MTO says. A great example of this would be we have a division that's getting ready to deploy, but that division headquarters deploys, and then they have brigades from other divisions that are falling underneath them. What AOSDI helps us do is take those units and task org them in AOSDI. So for example, if I have 101st Airborne Division deploying, I could take one brigade from 1st Cap, another brigade from 82nd, another brigade from 3rd ID, throw them underneath the 101st in AOSDI. That will go into IPPSA in what we call home-host relationship. And so you know that these brigades are still assigned to their home unit, but they are attached to the 101st for a duration of this deployment. All of that will happen in AOSDI. That will further allow us to keep track and accountability of our personnel better in IPPSA. And then what AOS further does for us now is it takes that Army force structure and you can assign it to relationships and positions. So in IPPSA, you're not going to be able to double slide anymore. You're not going to be able to say, hey, I have this one position here and I can put 3 or 4 and just double slot. You're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have to create temporary positions in AOSDI, what we call template positions. You create a template position in AOSDI, it feeds into IPPSA and allows you to keep those MOS queues and those personnel tracked from the paragraph and line number into IPPSA. So that concludes my instruction on IPPSA and the IPPSA development timeline. In conclusion, as warrant officers, I hope you keep abreast to what we're doing here for the program to help train our warrant officers, as well as stay involved in the IPPSA Change Champions Network. So if you get in contact with the IPPSA website, on our LRC, we have links to the IPPSA website, links to the IPPSA SharePoint, links to help to get involved and be a change champion for IPPSA. Stay abreast on what's going on, and Army Strong.